Welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday interview sessions. I am your host, Ryan Hartley. This channel exists to inspire and encourage your heart-centered leadership. Each week, I share interviews with some of the greatest heart-centered leaders in the world. I hope our time spent together helps you leave a heartprint where those around you are left better than yesterday. Please visit abty.co.uk if you would like us in your corner. These interview sessions are brought to you by Matt Media Online Marketing, an independent agency who specialise in content marketing, helping business owners get their message seen by the right audience. If you want to get your business seen through the power of social media, head to mattmedia.online. After today's interview, Team Hartley will be on a 2-week break. We will be on holiday or a vacation, depending on where you are in the world. So there will be no interview sessions for a couple of weeks. That gives you the perfect opportunity to catch up with some previous episodes that you may have missed. And I just want to take one moment just to thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for coming back to the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast, listening to the incredible guests that I share space and time with. And I hope that it leaves you better in some way. And if this is the first time, if this episode is the first interview session that you hear, I hope that it encourages you to stick around and maybe check out some of our previous guests. You can check out one of the previous 227 guests by looking through the podcasts or searching through the playlist on YouTube. On episode 228, I am joined by Dr. Dain Heer. Dr. Dain is the co-creator of Access Consciousness, and he is the author of 15 books. He's written books on the topics of embodiment, healing, men, money, and relationships, along with 2 children's books. And his book, Being You, Changing the World, is a #1 bestseller and has been published in more than 15 different languages. We have an incredible conversation around consciousness, energy, what it means to be a man, and the power of possibility. It's an incredible conversation, one that I'm really looking forward to sharing with you. I hope that there's something that you hear in the next hour's conversation that just sparks a 1 degree of new possibilities for you. It's episode 228, and it's with Dr. Dain Heer. Dr. Dain, welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast. How are you, brother?
Oh, my brother, I'm great. How about you?
Very well. I was prepping for this interview. I was like, I wonder what fabulous shirt he's going to be wearing.
Well, I'm wearing this shirt because I learned long ago from a good friend of mine, when you're having one of those days where you don't want them to look at your face, wear a bright shirt. So it's one of those days.
You've been doing that so well throughout your whole career.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm like, don't look at the face, look at the shirt, man.
I love that. Here we are. We sit here having a conversation. You are the co-founder of an organization called Access Consciousness. And yet I know you grew up in an LA ghetto, a ghetto in Los Angeles. And
yeah,
I know enough about consciousness to know that many people don't escape their circumstances. Like, how did you escape and transcend that level of consciousness?
Well, what's interesting is even when I was getting beaten, literally, there was always something in the back of my head where I'm like, it doesn't have to be this way. And I think that in a sense was my saving grace, because what it meant was I always kept looking for, if this is occurring and it sucks, well, what else and how do I find it? And so at about, I guess, 20 something, I started a spiritual search and, studied, because prior to that, I was reading books on self-help, personal growth, metaphysics, all that sort of stuff. And I started having some different experiences that opened my eyes to the awareness that what I thought was real is not necessarily real. And so I kept exploring that, and fast forward to a point where I chose to become a chiropractor because I knew some of these amazing healers that were creating these miracles in people's lives. I'm like, I want to do that. And here I am, I've graduated from chiropractic school. I'm going to weekend workshops for personal development and chiropractic magic, ways of changing things. And the number of times where I felt like I had finally found the answer to the happiness I was looking for by the end of a workshop, and then having it all crash back down on my head again by Wednesday of the following week was just, this happened more times than I could count. And so there was one day where this exact thing happened. I went to a weekend workshop. I'm like, yay, happiness. I'm going to have it this time. I'm going to keep it this time. And by Wednesday, everything felt like it was back even more so. And that was where I said, you know what, universe, either my life changes or I'm out of here. You have 6 months. I literally set a date and had a plan and was like, and that that gave me a sense of peace. And what's interesting is I was 30 years old at the time, and that was the first time in my life I had truly given up hope. Always before that, I was like, I know there's something different. I just need to find it. I know there's something different. I just need to find it. And yes, there are ups, yes, there are downs, but I'm going to find it. And I finally went, you know what? Apparently, I'm not going to find it. I've done everything I possibly can. So a week later, I came across an ad for Access Consciousness. And it said, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. And I was furious, you know, but I learned long before, if you love something or hate it, there's something there for you. And I hated it so much that I called the lady. I'm like, what do you do? You know, and she talks to me and it was like a happy marshmallow on the other end of the phone. And I was like, well, this is different. She's not trying to sell me anything. Okay, I'm more interested. Anyway, I had a session. I went into it depressed and suicidal, angry at my life, angry at the universe. And an hour and 15 minutes later, I came out with a sense of gratitude for being alive in a space that was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was like, it was total peace with everything. And that gave me hope to a degree that, because I always knew the change should be able to be fast, but I'd never seen anything do it that fast. And what she did is she gave me a tool to use. We got together once a week. She gave me a tool to use for when the universe wanted to crash in on my head. And I would use this tool and I would go back to that space. And then I get back with her the next week. We do another session. And that space that I had that was sort of keeping itself, which was awesome, expanded into even more. And she'd give me a tool to use. And when it wanted to cave back in on my head, it would expand. And after a couple of weeks, I was like, I was living the life that I wanted to. And what I mean by that, for me, it wasn't about the money that I had. It wasn't about the things that people think are going to make you happy. It was having a sense of me being okay, having a sense of joy, and having a sense that if I want to change something or choose something, I actually can. And so that was the long story perhaps, but that was sort of the evolution of getting to the point where I'm like, wow, this, what I always knew was possible actually is. And then I started working with Access because it was the one thing that was creating the literal miracles that I always knew should be possible. And I'm like, I'm in, man, let's go. And that was 23 years ago.
Hey, my friends, thank you for listening to the interview so far. We are 6. Yes, Always Better Than Yesterday has been in existence for 6 whole years. And as a thank you for being part of this community, I'm going to give you a special offer. We don't usually do special offers and discounts around here because we offer so much for free. But on this occasion, I want to offer you 6 sessions for the price of 3. I can help you connect with your heart set. I can help you bring more of your heart work to the world, and I can help you leave more of a heartprint on those around you. It's 6 sessions for the price of 3. You have until the 30th of June to claim this offer. And one final thank you for being here. We are 6. Here's to the next 6 years of Always Better Than Yesterday. We hope that you being part of our community leaves you better for those who need you. It's 6 sessions for the price of 3. You can claim this offer by DMing us at Always Better Than Yesterday UK on Instagram. Email us podcast@abty.co.uk. And here we go. Back to the interview. Thank you for being here, friends. Yeah, that's powerful. That's really powerful. And I it's funny because I interviewed Dr. John Amaro. I'm not sure if you know Dr. John, but I interviewed him a couple of years back, and he was doing all this kind of. I saw him on the Goop Lab documentary. I saw him doing some crazy kind of energy healing stuff above the body.
Yeah.
People would contort, and I was like, "What is he doing?" But I didn't realize in his early days he was a chiropractor, and I've come to learn that that, you know, whether it be because of the Rockefeller type stuff in the US with the raising of the medical doctor and you know, all the holistic approaches, shall we say, have been cuckooed. I didn't realize how much of a spiritual element there was to being, you know, chiropractor being looking at the body being a channel for spirit, God, universe, consciousness itself. Is that something that you were aware of whilst you were in your chiropractic circles?
In a sense, yes, because the people that I hung out with, chiropractic, from my point of view, is sort of, for me at least, was sort of a gateway drug to other possibilities,
Yeah.
and I love it. I mean, it's in that sense. And if you go back to the original chiropractors, they had this concept of from above down, inside out, which is we're not doing any healing. We're just setting free what is already your innate healing capacity, and they call it innate intelligence. And I friggin' love it. And for me, I would call it consciousness, which doesn't just go from God or source or whatever it is to you and through you. It's you. It's everywhere. And the way they talked about it was, there's a blockage in energy or blockage in life force or whatever you want to call it that creates the limitation. And I think we could all understand or relate to that, especially at this time in the world. And what I would say is the only time we ever create a difficulty that would lead to something like that is when we function from unconsciousness, which is unawareness, or anti-consciousness, which is where we choose against our awareness. How many times have you known, turn right, and you're like, no, the GPS says left, and you get stuck in traffic for 2.5 hours. It's like the universe is like, I told you, you just think you're smarter than I am.
So I have a Christian frame of reference, and for some of these concepts, and Jesus was once quoted as saying, "Those with ears, let them hear." And I think that kind of it alludes to this idea that we first have to be open to the possibilities to begin with. This sense that we have to have some form of belief. And I'm really interested that you in the moments of the abuse, you had an almost like a knowing that things could be, because many people take the opposite, which is this, oh well, I deserved it, this victimhood mentality. Can you characterize why you didn't have that? Have you reflected back? Do you know why there was just knowing that you were destined for more and that it didn't need to be that way?
I think we, to a certain extent, we're wired the way we're wired. And my sense is, from a larger perspective, we come here knowing, at least vaguely, what we're here to do and be, especially if that's to be a contribution to other people. And the life experiences that we have are, in a sense, from my point of view at least, and feel free to disagree with me, but it's like on the job training. It looks like one thing, and yet it may be something much larger. But once again, in order to even go there, you got to expand your perspective, which, and I got to say, I love Jesus. I just got to say, I love Jesus, and that the thing, one of the things Jesus said was, you will perform far greater works than I, and everybody's like, no, Jesus, it's all about you. And it's like, Jesus is like, asshole, I came here to show you what you're capable of. And now what have you done? You've turned it 180 degrees. So, oh man, I can only imagine Jesus rolling in his, well, I guess he's probably not in the grave anymore, that whole Easter thing, but you know what I mean, And
it's just face palming. He's face
palming.
Yeah,
totally. That's right.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we have a definition of consciousness and access consciousness, which is where everything exists and nothing is judged. And we live in a world that tries to separate into categories of right and wrong, good and bad, black and white, keep this close, separate from this. And it's one of the biggest things that is killing us in our own lives, but also worldwide, creating the separation that doesn't have to be there, and there's so many people that look at what is being created from that idea of polarization and separation, who know it doesn't have to be that way.
Hey friends, I just wanted to take a quick moment to introduce the new official sponsor of the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast, Matt Media Online Marketing. Matt Media have been involved in the production of over 100 interview sessions. I highly recommend their services. Matt Media Online Marketing are an independent agency who specialize in content marketing, helping business owners get their message seen by the right audience. If you want your business seen through the power of social media, head to mapmedia.online. You can find the link in the show notes. And here we go, back to the interview. Yeah, one of the things, I mean, I came to the church quite late, only in the last 3 to 4 years, and I had a kind of Jesus experience in my 30s. But one of the things that I feel like I have the freedom of is that I get to kind of learn, from good people like yourself, Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, the Heart Math Institute, and I think for me it all points towards source, God, universe, however people want to identify, and it's really interesting then when people interpret faith or religion through their own level of consciousness. Because a lot of society is characterized by pride, right? This degree of righteousness. There, I am right, and therefore there is a positionality about it. Whereas my perspective of when I do come to the words of Jesus, I see a playbook of how to love people, how to love myself, and how to love people. I don't see a right and wrong. I see I have access to grace. I have access to love, peace, and joy. If ever I choose to plant myself long enough to have access to those things. And I know that the fruits of my spirit become infinitely better when I spend time in that presence.
I love you. I love you.
Me too.
Exactly. Thank you. I'm just grateful for all the words you just spoke.
Well, I appreciate that. And one of the things that you've put in a recent blog post was this idea that it's not about the kingdom of me, but the kingdom of we. And I think that when we can tap into our consciousness, that becomes a natural byproduct, right? It's understanding that I'm good. I've got all that I need. I lack nothing. And so I can come and be of service. And I know that this is a really important part of your message with your book that you released last year.
Yeah, that is, it's very difficult to be a contribution to others when you feel like your own batteries are run down and you have so many needs. But if you look at the perspective of us as beings, the beings that we are beyond the mind, and not excluding the mind, but not making it the source, it's like an infinite being would not have needs. And yet and so one of the things I see is there are a lot of fundamental lies that run our world as though they're truths. And that, from my sense, is what sticks us more than anything else. And one of the tools I first got when I started on this access consciousness journey was, what's true for you makes you lighter. A lie makes you heavier. And I was with that for a bit. And then for one day, I just tried it for one day. I was like, okay, does this make me lighter or heavier? Like when somebody would say something, when I would read something. And back in that day, it wasn't when you get on the internet for 12 hours to avoid your life. It wasn't that, so there wasn't that level of intense input in that way. But for everything that I heard and everything somebody said, I just noticed in my world, does that make me lighter or heavier?
Yeah.
And after just a few hours of doing that, I started recognizing how many times somebody would come at me with their point of view. And I'm like, oh, that's not making me lighter. And I would notice then somebody would come to me and ask me a question. And I noticed, wow, that makes me a lot lighter. And I started recognizing this framework in which we live in a world with so many things that are quote unquote heavy, so many things that are not true for us as beings. And those are the things that we focus on, as though if we can make those true, then we'll finally have a life of ease and joy and lightness and all the things that we would like. And what I found is it's actually the opposite. Once you acknowledge that the things that are heavy are simply a lie for you, and it may not be a lie for the person sitting next to you. Who knows what their life experience has been? That's their life, not yours. But for you, if you start focusing on the things that make you lighter, and when you're going down a rabbit hole online, for example, of heaviness and twisted and just move on, press the back button or the forward button, but get the heck out of there. Go to something and ask yourself, hey, what would make me lighter right now? I just took a deep dive into a cesspool of somebody else's making. What would make me lighter right now? And if we did nothing else in our own world other than that, and just allowed ourselves to be that present, because that's the other part of that all of this engenders is more presence. and less separation, less need of being distracted. If we did nothing else other than head toward what makes us lighter, what starts to occur is over time, after a day, after a week, after a month, I mean, you do that for a month, it's like your whole life looks different and much more like something you like living.
Yeah. You've got a real heart for change, making people feel that change is possible. And I guess what's the opposite of that? Why do you think people stay where they are? Why do you think people, don't entertain that level of change?
Oh, I think there are a lot of reasons. What I found is about 50% of the population is change averse,
Mm-hmm.
and about 50% is change seeking.
Mm-hmm.
And if you recognize that without a judgment, then the people that are change averse, I've worked with so many of them, they have their reasons,
Yeah.
but I'd say the fundamental reason is they would rather have the suffering they know
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
than the possibility they don't.
Yes.
In other words, and this is an interesting concept because I've worked with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people at this point, in the last 23 years. And it's interesting to realize that most people that are avoiding change do it because they have a predictable reality
Yeah.
in the current reality they have. And they are assuming, they're taking a point of view
Yeah.
that what could happen, yeah, sure, could be better, but it's probably going to be worse. So I'm just not going to go there.
The illusion of safety.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
delusion of safety.
I come from an organizational development background and leadership space, and I think a lot of the project management people talk about, set out your vision for change, be inspiring, set out your vision for change, and I think sometimes actually what's also as compelling is find out why people want to stay the same. Because
Yes.
I've come to conclude that I don't think people would necessarily fear change. They just fight for things to stay the same. And I think that's just exactly what you've articulated with, which is just better the devil I know.
Yes. And it's interesting, and it's interesting to work with so many people who initially resisted change. And then see, one of the interesting things in working with people is the awareness of how energetically aware people are.
Mm-hmm.
And to such a degree, like, we actually have a tool in Access, which is who does this belong to? And it's based on the idea that 98% of your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your judgments, your sense of yuck, stuck, and what the F are actually things you pick up from other people.
Wow.
And if our wonderful pandemic lockdown showed us anything,
Yeah.
it was that we have an ability to pick up on a lot of stuff from a lot of people and buy it as ours, because nobody's ever told us this. And so it's like, if you've ever been in a relationship and you knew you needed to call your partner, but you didn't know why, and you call them, they're like, oh my God, thank God I was thinking about you, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh, whoa, I'm psychic. Okay, cool. But we do that with everybody all the time. We just don't recognize it. And to such a degree that most of our formation of what we consider the foundation of our reality is actually what we picked up energetically from how mom and dad were being before the age of 2. And so if you could just think about your mom and dad for a moment without, or throwing up or whatever, whatever your response is, you just think about your mom and dad for a moment and look at how many stuck places they have. And why? Well, they're not wrong. And this is what we've also got to get. None of this is about judgment. We have a definition of consciousness and access consciousness, which is where everything exists and nothing is judged. So none of this is about judgment. It's about the observation that will set us free. And that's where we want to look from always. What awareness can I have that will set me free to have more choice, to be more of me? And if you look and ask, what percentage of who, what, where, when, why, and how I am did I buy from my mother before the age of 2? And you go, whoa, because you get aware of whatever that is energetically. And then you ask the same thing about your father. And then we have a way of changing it called a clearing statement. And I suggest everybody use it. It's just POC and POD, POC and POD is the short form. And it stands for going back to the point of creation, or wherever you made this choice and aligned and agreed with that has now become your reality, that you don't even cognitively remember when you did it, but it's making the choice now to be something different that allows you to change it. And we have a website, it's free. It's called theclearingstatement.com. And the reason I give that out is so people can have access to this tool, because it's a way of changing these fixed points of view, these underlying bases that are limiting our reality that we can't even tap into. And it changes it really quickly. And I was doing an interview on the radio in Mexico, and I brought this up and told the lady, she went, "Of course, quantum physics." And I was like, "Oh yeah, thanks. Thanks for the explanation of what I've been doing for the last 23 years, Yeah. But it's making a different choice and taking yourself out of vibrating like that thing.
Yeah.
But the reason I bring that up is because in looking at where we will resist going or where we will not go, so much of that is what we learned from mom and dad about where one should not go, simply because that was where they would not and could not and should not go. And here we are, they were mommy and daddy. We were around them nonstop energetically for the formative years of our life before we could even talk. And so all of this is pre-verbal, or at least a huge amount of it. And also a huge amount of it is precognitive, but we can change it.
Which is the supposition, isn't it? On which all things are built. Because if it can't be changed. Well, it's like I'm the victim of my circumstances. That 98% stat is fascinating, and therefore, kind of as I'm thinking as you're speaking, is like, well, how do I work out who I am? Like, if I am carrying so much of all what society and those in my circle say about me and their expectations of me, it's just like so much of our adulthood is about unlearning who we thought we were supposed to be, to then take up who we're meant to be. And you know this far greater than I, because you've wrote books on it. But someone out there that's finally hearing this message loud and clear right in their heart and their mind today, like, where do they start? Like, where's the first place they go to discover the magnificence of who they are?
Love that question. And I have so many answers. The first is to start something that might help is write down a list of resources and start using them, like things that make me feel like me. And of course, then the question is, well, what is me? Well, you have a sense of you when you have a sense of lightness, a sense of enthusiasm for being alive, a sense that nothing is wrong, everything's cool, and a sense that you actually like the person looking back at you in the mirror. Well, that's you. So think of one time when you've had that in your life. What was going on? What were you doing? And some people are like, oh, I was on the top of a mountain. I got the physical and I was there with the beauty and there were no people around. Oh, there you go. Okay, so that's an acknowledgement of the energy of that, but also the acknowledgement, most of the times that most of us can remember or recall this sense of being us is when there weren't many people around. Why? Because we're constantly picking up people's points of view about the nature of reality without even realizing it. And so there's more on that. But if you can start a list of, I feel like me when, or this makes me feel like me, like, particular music that you like that just livens you up, you just want to get up and dance like that. Or maybe the peace when you go out in nature, or when you've had a great healing session or something, or, in this case, meditation, prayer, whatever it happens to be. We have this thing called bars, which was the session that I had. And for me, that's one of the things I'm like, oh, when I'm getting my bars run, oh, and you get up like a walking, talking meditation. I'm like, yep, that's definitely one of those things. And what you want to do is start writing this down, literally write it down, put it on your phone, however you choose to write. There's this thing called paper that we used to use back when I was a kid that I don't see very much of it anymore, but that, and the more that you're willing to engage and interact with anything that creates that sense, the more that will start to occur. So that's one element. The other one is to use this tool. Who does this belong to? Is it mine? We even have a free app for it. It's called Access Consciousness. Who does this belong to? And what it does is remind you, because if you want to break the machine that makes you think that all these things you're aware of are yours, you want to ask, who does this belong to every thought, feeling, and emotion every fixed point of view you have for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it works is, because what most of us do, we'll be having a happy day, and we're driving to work, or in this case, walking to the Zoom, going to work. And all of a sudden we go from happy to crappy, whether it's like sadness or stress about money or, oh, my body, or, oh, this hurts or whatever. It's like, wait, what happened?
Yeah.
Well, a huge amount of the time you're picking up on that energetic wavelength that somebody else is broadcasting. And if you go, who does this belong to? If whatever you just had that was heavy lightens up at all, it's not yours. And all you got to do is return to sender with consciousness attached. And so if you'll do this over 3 days, what happens is at the end of 3 days, you walk around like you're in a walking, talking meditation. Because you finally, after 3 days of doing this, you break the machine that makes you think that all of these things you're aware of in the world and with the people you care about and with the people you don't even know are yours. And so that's 2. That's point number 2. Third one is start asking questions rather than functioning from conclusion and judgment. And certain questions, because a question always takes things and expands them. It makes them go, whew. A conclusion, whenever you come to a conclusion or a decision or a judgment, you solidify that reality as yours, and now you function from it. Like if let's say you bought from mom and dad, money is a struggle. Okay, so you have this point of view as the foundation of things. So now what happens is you live your life, and your point of view creates your reality. Reality doesn't create your point of view. It's your point of view about it that determines how it shows up. So now money shows up as a struggle, and you go, see, I knew I was right. Money is a struggle. Well, was that point of view yours, or was that something you bought a long time ago? And so one of the ways out of these things is letting go of what's not ours by becoming aware of it and asking a question, but then asking questions about everything, like, what else is possible I've never considered? How does it get any better than this whenever something good or bad happens?
Yeah.
What's right about me I'm not getting? What's right about this situation I'm not getting? And what you do is you start to self-correct or self-undestroy, I guess, in that you start to actually look for the possibilities rather than stay stuck with the problem. And as you do that, you start to get a sense of you as somebody who's engaging in your life and actually starting to create your life from your choice, no longer suffering as though you're on the bullet train from the past that's filled with garbage,
I love the question that you asked. If I know not this, what else is possible?
That.
Yeah. And I think that kind of speaks into that kind of just be willing to suspend judgment, just be willing to suspend the anti-belief or the active disbelief. Because if we can just create that little bit of separation from the definitely not, oh, maybe, might, what's possible. Let me just entertain and it's like I think David Hawkins in his book Power versus Force says light cannot enter a closed box. And I guess that's why Jesus said about, there's only a handle on the inside. Only we can open it to let the light in. And there has to be a willful, all life will put us in circumstances which will crack our heart open, I guess. But such is the irony of our past. But I would love to know. I mean, for me, I've got a word here always put in yesterday. It's called Heartprint, and it's about the legacy, the ripple effect of all our heart-centered interactions with people. It absolutely speaks to the possibilities that we create for other people. I just love to know, like, what is it that gets your heart and your mind around this word possibility? I know that you use it a lot. I know that it fires you up. Like, what inspires you about the word possibility?
Because it means we're not stuck with anything. And everything has the possibility, if I may say, of getting greater. And so, and it's also not a fixed, because possibility and definition don't go together. You can't define a possibility. You can only head toward and experience it. And the interesting part is, if we're not defining it, the possibilities of what we can have presented to us can show up way greater than we can imagine.
Yeah, right.
And that's the fun part too, because for me, and it's like I get bored really easily. If I'm not changing and getting greater all the time, I'm like, come on, man, let's go. But not from that place of, oh, I'm a personal growth sort of guy, so this is what I do. Not from not being present, but from the acknowledgement of, if I'm an infinite being with infinite resources, there's so much more available. I'm barely getting started. And that's what makes the journey fun. And that was the sense I got 23 years ago, that when I had that first access consciousness bar session, where everything in my life looked like it was turned inward and just compressing, and this took it and went, and I was like, dude, I always knew it should be possible. Here it is. Which, once again, my favorite word, possibilities.
Yeah. Well, and I love this idea of possibility, because Sadhguru says about the word pursuing. That America will never be the happiest country on the planet because they're in the pursuit of happiness, and the first thing pursuing anything has to do is first reveal its absence. So I really love this idea of actually just allowing the universe, consciousness, to make space for whatever is possible. Leaving space for miracles that transcend our own kind of logic and reasoning. Because I think so much of our desires are a projection of a heart that feels like it's lacking in some way, that it's inadequate, that in some way the desire is to fill something that we think isn't even there to begin with.
So true. So very true. And that, as you spoke about, one of the other elements I want to address about what you said at the beginning about the seeking, it's an interesting thing that so many people on a journey of whatever realm you want to put it in, let's say personal development, spiritual growth, whatever, is they're so used to seeking while never finding. And so it is that you're speaking about. And then if you take it out of that realm to the quote unquote materialism or what have you, once again, seeking to fulfill a need.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is to recognize you are already fulfilled right now. Like, and now from there, how does it get any better than this? And what else is possible?
And that lies the gift, right? That the gift is there, and it's called a gift because we're supposed to give it away.
That, and be it. And here's the interesting thing about the gift is us being it creates a simultaneity of gifting and receiving. We live in a world that believes in give and take, and most people give so they can take later, or give so they can be acknowledged for giving so they can get something later, once again fulfilling that need.
Or like me, just give, and don't learn.
Yeah, that's the other one. See, that's the way a lot of us are wired. I only give because we don't want to be a taker.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is, if you've ever gifted to someone a smile, your time, energy, a hug, a gift, whatever, and they fully receive it, that's a gift back to us. And so there's this being made greater in that interaction that is so beautiful. And it's available to us if we just, once again, change our perspective, if we just change our point of view, because a lot of people in the world go around avoiding people taking from them because so many people are out to take. But I'm going to point back to a brother of both of ours, Jesus. What did he do? He's like, I got it. Have whatever you want. I got plenty. I would say that brother was the embodiment of, as close to embodying as an infinite being as we've probably seen.
Yeah.
And for me, though, most people take what Jesus was, and because you can have a sense, whether you're religious or not, doesn't matter your religion, we can tap into and get a sense of anybody throughout history and how they were showing up, what they were being, right? And as I do that with him, he's just there as infinite gifting, but also totally filled up with infinite receiving, with absolutely no point of view about whether the gift is received, because he knows that being the gift is the gift. And somebody else's willingness to receive it is their thing. Yeah. And can I tell you a little story? Please. Which you would understand that most would not. When I was a kid, I went to a church camp because my stepmother made my dad and I go to church, which was so much fun. No, not really. And what was interesting was we go to this church camp, and I wasn't a huge fan of church because there was so much judgment there. So many people were judging we're right and everybody else is wrong. And I'm like, I didn't get that then, right? Yeah. And still don't. And but they said at this one day, they said, if you would like to, you can take your Bible and go out in the woods and invite Jesus into your heart to forgive your sins. And I was like, that kind of made sense because I felt wrong a lot of my life. So I'm like, I must be a sinner. Maybe that's why I'm wrong. Okay, I'm going to do this. And even though I didn't believe it, quote unquote, right? And I go out in the woods. I put my back up against this big old tree. I pull my shirt up, and I have my Bible in my hand, and that I had not read. And I was like, Jesus, I don't know if you're real. Quite frankly, I kind of doubt it because I see what people are doing in your name. But if you are, can we do this thing, please? Will you come into my heart and forgive my sins? And I'm thinking nothing is going to happen, right? Well, within about 30 seconds, there is this that I have no words for. That was, I just, and so fucking beautiful. Like so incredibly beautiful. And I was transformed. And it was interesting because it wasn't an experience, my stepmother, who hated me, was very mean. She's like, how was it? What'd you do? Did you do it? And I was like, it was good, But for the next 2 years, everything that occurred, everything that was an upset in my family or anything else, and there was a lot of upset in my family, they were specialists at it, really. I was like, give it up to Jesus. Give it up to Jesus with everything. And it was interesting because I had that peace for 2 years. There was one time where I was walking to the store, and I'd saved up my money, and I had $10. And at that time, $10, you could buy half the store, And so I was so excited. I was going to get candy. I was going to get magazines. I was going to get this little plastic gun. I was going to, all these things, right? And I'm walking around the corner on my way to the store, and there's a homeless guy there. He's like, man, I'm starving. You got any money? And I was like, and in my head, I was like, what would Jesus do? I'm like, here you go. So I give him the money. He's like, dude, this is, bless you. I was like, thank you. Okay. So I'm like, well, guess I'm going back home. So I start walking back home. I go around the corner that I just walked around. There was $10, literally a $10 bill on the friggin' sidewalk. And I was like, thank you, Jesus. And I,
It's powerful, isn't it? And do you know what? Like, and you're right. Many people, those with it, they don't have ears, so they can't hear. But I get it, and it's surrendering to that. And the more and more I speak to people who've done things in that name, or even just the general name of God, it's just like funny things happen. Funny things happen, and I think it's the residue. I think it's the fruits of our spirit and the little miracles that far transcend our understanding. The more and more I speak to people, the more and more it reveals its nature. And for me, after I had my heart experience, I could see the beauty of creation, of the divine in everything. I was having these little moments with birds, like it was bizarre. Like people that knew me beforehand, that they'll be, if they listen to me now, they'll be like, "Who is this guy?" Like I didn't always have the long hair, like. And even just recently, my wife and I, we took the family to a festival, church festival. We saw Hillsong United, and they have this one song called "So Will I," and there's this lyric that says, "If all of creation reveals your nature, then so will I." And it really reminded me as I was doing my research, is your symphony of possibility, that all of creation, all of universe, like I think universe means one song, which just shows that the whole of creation is singing this one song. And in your work of Symphony of Possibility, you encourage everybody to be the unique player of their song. What does that mean?
Oh, You described it beautifully. We each are part of the symphony that is the universe. And it's interesting, you know, if I look at some of the things you're speaking about and some of the other conversations that I have with people where people will say, oh, I can do this because of, like in my case when I was a kid, Jesus, for example. Well, that was my permission to be me. Like, thanks Jesus for the inspiration, you know what I mean? And thanks for the permission to be me, because it's about us being us. And whether you think we were created by God or not, or whatever, doesn't matter. If God created us, he created us to be the fullest expression of us, not to make ourselves less. So, but for me, this symphony of possibility, see, what happened was I was, you know, I was a chiropractor, got to the place where I wanted to end my life, had an access consciousness session, totally transformed that point of view. And it was interesting because after that session was the awareness that I had. I was like, after a few years, I realized, oh my goodness, this is a similar thing to what I had when I was up against the tree and for the next 2 years. And I let it go after 2 years because I did something that I judged very dynamically, which is interesting. So most people live in a place of where they're not recognizing that they are this gift. And so what the Symphony of Possibilities is I had done, I met the founder of Access Consciousness after having my sense of reality just continue to expand. And he came to my office for a chiropractic session and said, look, ask my body what it wants, follow the energy, you'll know what to do. Don't keep it in the box of chiropractic. There was an energy that came through that was so beautiful. And it had this sense of being transformative somehow, except it was just energy. It was like all the universes that had played around in my head my whole life, I finally had something to do with them. It was like they connected and they started showing me that I could just be. And this is the weird part. How do you describe to somebody? What I did was I just was being with him, and he's flopping on the table like a fish, and I'm just like this, right? What are you doing? I don't know, but there's a lot of stuff in the universe I'm tapping into. It's fucking awesome. You should check it out. You know what I mean? It's like no way to explain it. So what the Symphony of Possibilities is after doing thousands of those sessions and it became about how can I contribute to other people their awareness of the gift they are in this universe, and that they're part of this symphony that the universe is, and that they, just by being, can open up to how they can contribute to people in their bodies, in easing pain, in creating more space, in creating change in all kinds of areas, by tapping into what the universe already is and is showing us that we can be, in essence, a conduit for.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. One of the things that the world is doing at the moment is they're really confusing what it means to be a man. There are some real funny things going on in the world, what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman, to be fair. But I'd love to specifically focus on what it means to be a man. Here at Always Been Yesterday, I've started running a men's group. It's called Akira. It's a council for men who want to walk the path of wisdom. And we've been running it for about 3 months. So it's really junior, it's really evolving, and it's growing, and it's beautiful. And we're journeying in this idea of what does it mean to be a good man? What does it mean to be a gentleman? And I know that you wrote a book on that topic a couple of years back, and I'd just love to know, what is the greatest thing that the men in my group can do to become good men?
Number one, get over everybody's judgment about what it means to be a man. And because, as you're saying, men are having a tough time right now. But here's the interesting part is, and I'm not a big fan of categorizing anything or anyone, okay, but about 50% of the population, once again, is the type of man that is the sort of typical person, the people that would perpetrate what occurred during the Me Too movement on others, okay? Then the other 50%, and by the way, those are very rough numbers. Please don't think I actually believe these numbers are accurate, okay? I'm just trying to give some perspective. So let's say the other 50% of men are more outraged than the women about all of this stuff that went on, let's just call it the Me Too, what started the Me Too movement, because not only would we never do that, but it's being done in our name. And then it's also being used as though this is somehow about men and women. No, this isn't. This is about abusers. That's what this is about, people being abusive, period. One of the experiences I had when I was a boy was, for several years of my young life, I was abused harshly by women. And to the point where they were beating my little naked body with belts. That's what I received. And so when women tell me that men are abusive, I'm like, nuh-uh. People that are abusive, people are abusive. This is not about men and women. This is about people. And we need to recognize that because we are men, number one, we are not wrong. Although there is that old philosophical question, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around, is the man still wrong? And I think the answer for years has been yes. So I don't know what to do with that. But it's like, but recognize, if you're a man who actually, to be a true gentleman, you realize that you can enjoy women, you can empower women, you can enjoy having sex with women and still empower women, and you can still empower men. And it becomes far less about the gender, and it becomes far more about the being in front of you that you can contribute to. And so recognizing also one of the other elements of this, because you brought it, specifically to the men's group that you're doing. And by the way, thank you so much for doing this. It's such a gift. We gentlemen truly need some resources, which is why I wrote the book. But it's like the recognition that because they are sensitive, because they are aware, because they are caring, this actually gives them the capacity to be a truly great man. And most of the men that are wired that way, that were wired that way from the time they were little, it's like people, they never felt like men, because they weren't the, fathers would be like, come on, let's go play sports. Let's go kill some shit, whatever. And a lot of these guys are like, no, I want to cuddle and I want to do nice things, but, and that's also, and I don't mean that as a stereotype either. I mean, we're everything. And we've been made wrong for the sensitive parts of us. That is not a wrongness. That is a strongness.
I just feel that there is a huge desire for men to go out in the world and gain worldly advancement, leadership, position, status, and hierarchy. And the world will get the best of these men, and the family will get the rest of them. That was true of me in my early career. And it's not until I had my children I thought, actually, do you know what? I talk about leadership. I need to step up and lead in my home. And that requires a couple of things. That requires me to even figure out who I am, and so I can be the most authentic expression of us. Like, what does it mean, our family unit? Like, who do we want to be in this world? And along with that comes the accountability that my children keep me to. when I talk about heart-centered leadership, and we're heartleys and we're kind. But I think this is the thing that, even if it is for men, I just call them into this active leadership role. Don't be passive when it comes to the most important people in your life. Like, pour into them. Like, these are your living legacy.
That's beautiful. And that one shift in perspective, because one of the other things that we, in today's world especially, well, in so many ways, not just as gentlemen in the world, but it's as though we're encouraged to take a sideline perspective on everything. Like, don't engage too much, don't interact too much, just sort of let your life go on autopilot. And, as though personal interaction on that level is, we don't even know what it is. We just know that it's kind of discouraged, And you talking about taking that active leadership role in the family, it's an acknowledgement of what's actually true for us. And going back to what's true for us makes us lighter. And what we've got to do is we've got to choose to be those things in order to have that lightness show up in our lives. And we're fully capable of it if we will acknowledge it. And also so many of the gentlemen I work with, and my sense is also so many of the gentlemen you work with, are, as they do start to quote unquote step up more, get more present in these areas, they find out that they have a strength and a contribution that they never recognized. And it carries over into the rest of their lives and their families' lives.
Yeah. Or they transform one of their shadows and their scars into one of their like superpowers. And, you know, one of my favorite scriptures comes from the thorns in the flesh, where it's a different translation that just simply, I think the well-known translation is that, you know, in your weakness, you're made strong. But in the Passion Translation, it says, in your weakness, you will find the fullest expression of God. In your weakness, you will find my fullest expression. And I just think, wow, like what a gift that is. Through the cracks and through the pain, allows us to shine forth the greatest attributes that only really are able to be manifest because we have experienced, you know, I guess the polarity or the contrast of that.
That brilliantly. We have a saying in Access, what if everything you thought was a wrongness of you is actually a strongness of you?
There we go.
And isn't it interesting? One of the things I've seen is this reality seems to wire things in such a way as to get us to avoid our natural strength. In that we're supposed to, so for example, if you've experienced abuse and you've stopped the cycle and aren't perpetrating it and are looking for something different, that's not because you're weak, it's because you're strong.
Right.
And exactly as you're saying, and we need to recognize that these things that we have experienced that can be characterized as because of weakness, what if it wasn't? What if it's something, what if everything is the opposite of what it appears to be and nothing is the opposite of what it appears to be? Like, turn that 180 degrees, and the willingness to have that perspective. What if that really shows us?
And then asking, what are the infinite possibilities now available to me?
Yeah.
Set that on fire. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I could talk to you all day, my friend, and I've really enjoyed our conversation. I want to be super respectful of your time. I want to circle back to that word heartprint. You know, the way the interpretation I use it is effectively is if I could look back and listen to the symphony of my possibilities I've created, is if I could hear that song, if I could hear the different vibration of every interaction that I've ever had with a human being, and then the every interaction that that human being has had on someone else that is otherwise more loving, kind, compassionate than otherwise it might have been. Dain, I'd love for you to reflect on what you think your heartprint might be.
Oh. Having just gone on the journey as you were speaking about that, this is interesting because talking about myself in that way is a bit challenging, to be honest with you. And so I will try to actually put words. I would hope that my heartprint has been to so many things, but so many things I desire that to be, which is to have empowered people to know that no matter what they've experienced and what they've chosen, they are not wrong. To know that they are greater than they can fathom and greater than they've ever imagined. To know that they actually have the capacity to live as that and they don't have to settle for anything less. And to know that they are a gift and a contribution to this world and this universe and every single one of us.
Beautiful. My brother, thank you for going now. I really greatly appreciate that, and be honored if you'd leave us a final thought from your good self.
Whoa. No matter what you've experienced in this life, please know that everything you've ever desired, everything you've ever dreamed of is actually possible. You are fully capable of creating it. All you got to do is ask and be willing to receive and be willing to recognize the gift of you and your difference in this world. And you got this. And lastly, never give up, never give in, and never quit. And you will have far greater than you ever imagined possible.
Dr. Dain, appreciate you, brother.
You also, Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thank you for making it to the end of the interview here on YouTube. I hope that our time spent together has left you a little bit better than before you push play. Before you go anywhere, please leave a comment down below, some of your key reflections, your key takeaways. I love hearing from you and what this conversation has inspired in you. Let me know what you're going to do as a result of this conversation. I will be back next Wednesday where I will share another inspiring guest. To make sure that you don't miss that, please do subscribe, hit the bell, and you will be notified as soon as it goes live. If you're curious to know how I, through Always Better Than Yesterday, can serve you, your team, your organization, please do visit alwaysbetterthanyesterday.com, and it will be my honor and privilege to help you in any way I can. Keep leading, my friends. I've been Ryan Hartley, host of the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast here on YouTube. Always love.